As far as gray squirrels going, this is actually a pretty decent one. This was a fox squirrel. It was a real big guy, and I don't think I see many fox squirrel. It was significantly larger than the regular gray squirrels I see, and the fur was really nice. This was a good February kill, and I found that all the furs I pulled out of February this year were really nice. They were healthy. I think they were well fed. The furs looked good. Wasn't too scrappy. This one, I kind of messed up on something I was working on, so I decided to make it into a pouch, and it's okay. It's not my best pouch, but inside of this pouch, when I carry this, it's kind of a primitive thing. You know, I can throw it in a pocket. It actually works as a hand warmer. It's really nice and warm, but throw it in a pocket, and it's kind of my bushcraft kit. So sometimes I carry some really basic stuff in here. A little bit of paracord for a couple things. Like it's probably going to rain a little bit, and I have a poncho, and I might use just that much cordage to actually set up my poncho so I can sit under it in the rain. That's not a lot of cordage. I have a little bit more always in this parka or whatever, not parka, what do you call this? Anorak. I have a little bit of just like real thin cordage inside of the anorak, but I at least have some paracord with me, and then if I want to do bow drills, like today I'm going to try some bow drills, then I have cordage to make a bow drill with. Lately I've been playing around with this. This is the Opinel folding saw. This is their number 12, not the 18. They have a bigger one, but the number 12 is pretty cool. It's a little bigger than I wanted it to be. I mean, I should have known how big it was. I could read the stats online. I thought it was going to be like this big, somewhere in here. It's a little bigger than I wanted, but the value with that is it is a longer saw. It pulls, it cuts on the pull rather, and it's just a nice size saw. It actually fits really well inside of this anorak, inside of the utility pockets. I can put this and the next item in there as well if I need to keep stuff dry or out of the rain. If I want to keep this dry, I can put the whole thing in there. This is also an Opinel that I carry. It's a carbon steel one. It is rusty, and I like it. Man, this has been used so much. I think it's a number, what is it, a number 7? I tried to get the smaller one. I've had number 8, number 9. I think I gave them to friends, but this is a little guy. It's all rusted out, and I love this Opinel. I've had this one for years now. I've done animals with it. I've done a lot of bushcraft with it. I've done traps, triggers, lots of feather sticks, little skinning, lots of food prep, and that's probably a good reason to clean it up right there. It's just the food prep portion of it. But I love this little lightweight Opinel. It weighs next to nothing, and I can stick the 2 of those in here, and this is rain resistant. It's not rain proof at all, but it's rain resistant, and I can put everything inside of here, or I can put it in my pouch. Sometimes I just like to wear this on my side if it's not raining out like today. And this is a nice combination. So I wanted to talk a little bit about these things. These two are underrated. I'm, as much as anybody else, I'm a fan of larger bushcraft knives. I have them. You've seen them on my channel. I do a lot. I've done a lot of Bear Forest knives. I've done some stuff for Brissa. I've done a little bit of LT Wright, and I like those blades. All of those are some of my favorites, but I don't think you have to have stuff like that to be effective. And in fact, the makers of those knives would tell you the same thing. Now, these are not to the quality of something like a Bear Forest knives or an LT Wright knives or even the Brissa. They're not going to be there. They're not as durable. They're not as rugged. They're not going to last as long actually either, but they still have some real significant value. They're made in France, which is kind of interesting. I don't think that makes them particularly special, but it's interesting because they feel a little bit historic, kind of the way that these blades started out. And this is enough blade length, I find, if you're willing to go to work with it, that you can do logs about this big. If I'm going to do spoons and do some crafting, or I need to get a little bit of firewood started so I can break it down and haul it or break it down into burnable chunks, I can start with something like this. I don't need a full-size saw. And as I showed you just a second ago, there's enough length there. It does lock. There's enough length that if you're willing to work at it, you can really knock down a good piece of wood, and the handle is really ergonomic and comfortable. Not to mention, this is extremely lightweight. It is not a heavy saw at all. It does have a lanyard loop on there if you wanted to find another way to clip it on or carry it. This blade being 1095, I have been able to spark rocks on it, it's kind of tricky because I have the thin model. If you want to spark rocks off of it, you want to get some flint and spark it up into chaga or, you know, some old coals, you're probably going to want the number 9. It's really hard to get enough flakes off of here, and I find that a lot of times if I'm going to use this for sparking, I actually plant it into a log or something on the ground. I put my tinder at the base and I spark my rocks right into it with it open and locked. That being said, I've had really good experiences with this on trips. It's been super useful. Sometimes it's useful in ways that other blades are not so useful. Like a big, thick 1/8 Scandi grind knife is not going to slice food super well. Sometimes I find that this blade is a little bit thinner. It's not always sharper, but it's thinner, and so it can just slip through certain materials a little better. Sometimes I don't want to run my Scandi through something, and I would rather take out this blade and sacrifice the edge if I have to. So these are really nice additions. I typically am still wearing another blade. So here's where I need to give my hand away. I do usually have another blade with me, and this is an LT Wright. It's old, reliable. I really like the Bush Baby series. This is an A2 blade, so not amazing steel, but it's a pretty good knife. Has the orange liners because I love orange. Super ergonomic, comfortable handle. It's not a big blade, but it's big enough for me. And I usually have one of those with me, just in case my other blade fails if I'm on an overnight. Day trips, I can get away with it. I'll be okay. But I think these are underrated, and I'm just going to whittle a little bit with a piece of wood here. I sawed this up with the Opinel number 12, and it wasn't too many pulls. It's a really nice, clean cut on both ends. Cuts really well on this hardwood. I can't remember what this actually was. Let's take out my number 7 here. Haven't touched this up, haven't sharpened it in a long time, but it's still very thin, and so just based off of thinness alone, it can still dig into the wood reasonably well. Sometimes that's why thin knives are deceptive. You might think a thin knife is sharp. It could be almost dull, actually, and still cut lots of things reasonably well, just because it's thin. So this is a pretty hard piece of wood, I can tell. But I'll be able to still do a square notch without too much trouble. One of the downsides of a really thin blade is reinforcing it with your thumb is not going to be super comfortable the way it would be with a 1/8 thick, Bushcraft knife. But if you're a kind of person who doesn't really use a blade all that much when you're backpacking or camping, then this just has a lot of advantages, and it has kind of an old school nostalgic feel. Reminds me a little bit of a slip joint. Not that it is a slip joint, just kind of reminds me of the feel of real simple woodworking blades, like the carven jack or some of those old school knives. I think every kid's first serious cut is with a slip joint. They cut themselves. It's kind of a rite of passage. So this is just a number 7. It's not, it's not super tight, but it does lock. It's not a huge amount of blade surface, but the advantage of that is that it's not terribly dangerous to work with. It is very thin. And that's one thing I'm always trying to pay attention to, is how hard I'm working the edge, because it is so incredibly thin. So there's the start of a square notch with it's probably dull. Probably a pretty dull blade. Let's just find out. Yeah, it is. It's relatively dull, but it's still thin. So it's deceptive. Like I said, I'm able to still push wood around with it because it's thin. And I have just enough of a sharp spot left over right back here. Okay. Right here, there's still a nice sharp spot. And I have a little something to work with right there. You can tell the rest of the blade, though, really not sharp. I will be sharpening this when I get home. I tend not to try to leave blades that dull, but it's just been a beater knife, and it's kind of its purpose. Okay, so that took a real long time, but like comparatively, that took a long time. But there's sort of a square notch. I think this is actually a pretty hard stick too. It seems hard. There's a little bit of a square notch to start with. And yes, you can use your Opinel, and my hands are fine. It's not terribly uncomfortable. I've got XL size hands. They're pretty big. And using this number 7, I can still get my hands around it. There's enough there. There's a little bit of a flare on the pinky, so there's something to grasp. And when I need to, I can push into the spine. It's just not something you would want to push on all day in carving. And here's a little comparison. Here's the LT Wright Bush Baby against that number 7. Obviously the handle on the Bush Baby, the broadness of the blade, the thickness of the blade, there's some considerable differences between the two. This weighs a lot more than this does. And this cannot pack down quite as tight as something like this can. Now this is strong, it's robust. I really have no concerns. I'll baton it, I'll beat it into hardwood, I'll bow drill with it really, really aggressively, you know, making spindle cuts. This, you can do everything with, and it's going to be just fine. These scales are epoxied on, as well as, I think they're pins, if I remember right. I think they're just pins they go through, but with the epoxy and the pins, these things are just bomb-proof. And this is still really strong for the basic tasks that I was just doing, and I can still do bow drills with it, can still do bow drill notches with it. It's just going to take me more time, and I'm going to have to touch up this edge a lot more than I am with the A2, in my opinion. Another thing I'm probably not going to do with the Opinel is split wood or baton wood. I have before with the number 9. I didn't like the way that the lockup felt after that. I do think it changed some things, even though I basically hinged it like this and just tried to work it down the piece of wood, which is the way to do it with a folding knife. But these are not going to survive many times of that at all, even with moderate sized wood like this, which is basically under an inch. It's probably 3/4 of an inch. This is where a fixed blade, just hands down, is a more superior and more trustworthy option. You're going to have to find another way with the Opinel, like making a wedge of some sort or a sharp rock to drive it in there and get a crack started. There are other ways. It's just not as fast as doing it this way. Now when it comes to material removal, just for basic tasks, because it's thin, it does bite pretty good. Can see I get plenty off, and I'm just flattening out a piece to try to run some feathers down this piece of wood. Since I said it was dull, I'm going to have to use the very, very back edge of the blade to try to get something sufficient here for feathers. It's a flat grind, and I find that flat grinds can feather really nice thin feathers. Depends on the piece of wood, it always does, but usually not too much difficulty. I think I'm actually better with saber grinds and convex grinds out of all of them for feathers, but I'm probably better with flat grinds than I am with scandies sometimes. It depends how thin the scandie is and the profile against the wood. It's not hard to get some thin pieces. Give me a second, I'm going to get some thinner ones here. I just have to hold it a little differently. I can really feel when I get to the dull spot. It's very, very dull. I can feel when I'm on the sharp spot on there too. It just skips over the wood once you get to the dull spot if you're trying to start a cut. But if I start far enough back, and there's plenty of blade there, if I start far enough back, it gets a nice thin curl. And these are totally sufficient for starting with the fire steel. If you have a bow drill and you're going to get an ember pile together, which is the hope today, I'm going to hopefully do some of that. It's really windy, so I don't know how that'll go. And I have to find the right wood, which it's spring, so probably chose a hard time to come out and do this. But anyways, you get yourself a handful of really thin, really dry curls, and if you can't find other good materials, you can kind of condense these into a little bird's nest, push it down and flatten it out. And I usually take some grasses around it, and I'll take the ember and put it in the middle of all those feathers and blow it in like this. And once I get that to start, I'll usually have a feather stick waiting by. I'll transfer the fire to a bigger, like I have a pit behind me. I don't know, can you see it right there? There's a pit. Then I'll transfer it over to a pit. It's too windy to have a fire today by far, but that's exactly what I would be doing. I forget how much I like these little blades. Really not too bad. And no, it's not a bushcrafty looking knife, but you can do bushcraft things with a little knife. It's probably only fair that now I do a little test in hand with this. It's like saber convex. I basically convexed saber type grind with the LT. And I feel like I can put a lot more pressure into my cuts. And this is a hard piece of wood, I can tell. Because this knife usually cuts really, really well. And I have to push pretty hard to get into these cuts. But the $7 knife, $10 knife, whatever they are now with inflation, that could do it just fine. Ooh, it's windy. Oops. Obviously, comfort level is just so much higher. I can press harder because it's a thicker stock. And I have more of a secure handhold, so I don't mind pushing aggressively into this. And that's basically cutting into a knot. Yep, this is going to be a lot faster, but I'm doing the same notch that I did before, the same technique. And it's just faster. It's not like this is so superior. If anything, one downside of a more broad knife is that the more broad knife can't fit into as small of pockets as our typical bushcraft knives do. But this one isn't bad. It's a very small knife comparatively to the other blades that I use when I'm on overnight trips. Yeah, the cut might be a little cleaner with the bushcraft knife. So here was the first one, and there's the next one. It's probably a little cleaner, a little bit more exact and precise because I could really cut the sidewalls harder with this blade. But as far as just accomplishing a task, both of these are going to do just fine. That's pretty much the whole point of this video today. Is Opinel is still relevant. I'm still a big fan. They're not fast deploying. They're not hard use. They're not expensive, but they are pretty effective. So if you're looking for something a little bit more traditional and you don't want to go with a fixed blade, I think you should actually look at this brand. They're kind of fun.